Hello, I'm Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine. Here to bring you the summary of the last 24 hours of the Israel-Hamas war. It is currently to the eve of November 22nd, 2023 in the United States, the morning of November 23rd, 2023 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, that deal has been officially postponed by at least 24 hours. After it was reported earlier in the day that a top Hamas leader, Musa Abu Marzouk, as well as Israeli officials stated that the pause in the fighting was going to start at 10 a.m. on Thursday morning as the deal would commence, and it was further reported that the head of the Mossad, Dedi Barnea, had been in Qatar and received the list of names from Hamas of the hostages that are going to be released the following day. At midnight in the Middle East, this was all overturned. The head of the National Security Council in Israel announced that according to the original plan, the first hostages are only going to be released on Friday. Israel's Prime Minister's office stated that there is a 24-hour delay, then clarified that the deal does exist, but that the mechanisms through which the hostages are going to be released are still being worked out. The Wall Street Journal then published further information stating that Hamas transferred only a partial list of names that are to be released, and also that Hamas has not officially signed off on the mechanism through which the hostages are going to be released. According to different reports, all these issues can be worked out fairly easily, but right now there's a delay of 24 hours in the release of hostages and in any pause in the fighting. Regarding more information that's coming out about the deal in the last 24 hours, the New York Times today published that, as Hamas stated, Israel will not be permitted to carry out any aerial activity in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip throughout the entire days of the pause, and that it will not be allowed to carry out any aerial activity in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip for 6 hours a day. According to Israel, it was only going to be the 6 hours a day, but had nothing to do with the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. In addition, Josh Feiner, who is a deputy national security advisor in the White House, also stated to the New York Times that the aerial ban over the Gaza Strip includes also U.S. aircrafts and drones. In addition, today, advisor to leader of Hamas Ismail Haniyeh, Tahir Hanunu, stated that as part of the deal, 8 fuel trucks will enter the Gaza Strip each day. According to the initial reports, this was going to be only 4 fuel trucks in addition to the 2 fuel trucks that are going in each day. Unclear what the exact number is. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad today stated that the group reiterates its position that all non-citizen hostages, i.e. IDF soldiers, that the group is holding, will not be released until all Palestinian prisoners are released. And while that is phrased as a negative threat, that is also a way of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad saying that they are willing to release civilian hostages if the deal actually goes through. In addition, after Prime Minister Netanyahu stated that the Red Cross is going to be allowed to visit the hostages that stay behind as part of the deal, however this wasn't reported elsewhere, the Red Cross today reported that they have not been updated about visiting hostages, but if such visits could be arranged, they are fully prepared to do so. Moving on to the ongoing fighting, there were continuous rockets and missiles today fired from the Gaza Strip towards the southern parts of Israel. Rockets pummeled primarily the southern parts surrounding the Gaza Strip and the town of Sderot. In the Gaza Strip, there was substantial IDF activity reported in the Sheikh Zayed neighborhood of Gaza City. This is a very prestigious neighborhood where many prominent Hamas leaders used to live. According to reports, there were substantial amounts of tunnels and rockets that were found in the different buildings, and Hamas outposts that had a wall simulating the wall that surrounded the Gaza Strip that Hamas had burst through, used for training, was found in the outpost. The outpost was destroyed. In addition, there was also substantial IDF activity reported in the Beit Hanun area. Regarding the IDF's continuous activity around Al-Shifa Hospital, the hospital has largely been evacuated, and the IDF is expanding its activity in the tunnel city that is underneath Al-Shifa Hospital. The IDF also invited today international reporters to come and visit the tunnels themselves. What the IDF has uncovered in the tunnel is very elaborate command centers. They've also found that Hamas has detonated and blocked off certain passages of the tunnels, likely that lead to other areas within Gaza City. They also found different evacuation sites for the leaders, weapon storages, and also uncovered more evidence that Israeli hostages were held in these tunnels at various times. The Lebanese El Miadi network, which is affiliated with Hezbollah, reported today that the Indonesian hospital in the north of Gaza Strip has been completely evacuated as part of the IDF's plans to enter the hospital. The report is not confirmed anywhere else. However, there has been substantial activity of the IDF around the Indonesian hospital. Now this report came in from El Miadin. In addition, the IDF reported that it took over a Hamas outpost in the Tel El-Awa area in Gaza City, and that this outpost includes Hamas's main intelligence headquarters. There's also substantial fighting reported in the area. The IDF today put out an intermediate summary that stated that so far in the war it has destroyed over 400 tunnel entrances and infrastructures of Hamas. And finally, there was a report today that there was substantial artillery bombardment in the eastern town of Khan Yunis. The IDF has previously already drop leaflets in the eastern neighborhoods of Khan Yunis calling on Palestinians to begin evacuating from these areas. Today was reported substantial artillery attack in that town. Regarding casualties, 2 IDF soldiers are reported killed in the last 24 hours. In addition, the Gazan Information Ministry is reporting 14,532 Palestinians have been killed since the war began. These include 6,000 minors, and that over 7,000 people are still considered missing. While I've been reporting every day that this is coming from the Information Ministry rather than the Palestinian Health Ministry and that no one else is citing this, the United Nations today started citing these records of the Gazan Information Ministry that is also controlled by Hamas, and explicitly stated that this ministry has taken over responsibility for reporting casualties since the Palestinian Health Ministry has ceased to function. Moving on to the humanitarian situation, Martin Griffiths, who is the head of the United Nations Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, stated today the situation in Gaza is, and I'm quoting, the worst anything has ever been. And I don't say that lightly. I started my activity when I was in my 20s in the killing fields of the Khmer Rouge. So comparing everything he has seen in his life, he's saying the situation in Gaza is worse than anything has ever been. There were also reports today of 14 different ambulances that were evacuating the last patients out of the Al-Shifa hospital, taking them down to the European hospital in Khan Yunis. In addition, Israel continued to call upon Palestinians that are still in the north to evacuate down south to the safe areas in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. Regarding humanitarian aid, a total of 80 trucks carrying food, water, and medical supplies are reported to have entered the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours, alongside 75,000 liters of fuel that entered in several trucks in accordance with the deal that the IDF and Egypt and the United States struck last week. Moving on to the West Bank, there was intensive IDF activity reported in the Tulkarem refugee camp. Yesterday I reported that as I was doing the recording, there were initial reports coming in that the IDF was concentrating around the Thabit hospital. According to reports, the gun battles there continued for several hours. At the end, several Palestinians were arrested, and 6 Palestinians are reported to have died in different airstrikes that occurred during the confrontations. There are no reports on how many Palestinians were arrested in the West Bank in the last 24 hours. Moving on to the north of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, there were continuous rocket and missile barrages from Lebanon in the northern parts of Israel. Rockets targeted the Mevot Hermon area in the Upper Galilee, Western Galilee. There was RPG fire towards the Hanita area, and Hezbollah took responsibility for 6 different border incidents. This usually means shooting at different IDF outposts or attempted sabotage of the fence. The IDF carried out 2 initiated attacks, that means attacks that were not specifically retaliations, as well as substantial retaliations against a wide variety of Hezbollah infrastructure, including different attack units. There are reports in El Manar saying that the IDF attacked also using drones, specifically in the Deir Siran area. In addition, there was a report today in Reuters and in Al Jazeera that 5 to 6 people were killed in IDF retaliation in the Beit Yahun area in southern Lebanon. Later it was reported that one of the people killed was Abbas Muhammad Raed, who is the son of the head of Hezbollah's political party in the Lebanese parliament, and then another is Khalil Jawad Shahami, who is a commander of the Radwan force. The Radwan force is Hezbollah's commando units, equivalent to Hamas's Nukhba force that carried out the attack on October 7th. In addition, Hezbollah is reporting, as a result of these different retaliations, that a total of 84 of its people have been killed since the war began. A final report regarding the fighting up north, Syria reported today that Israel carried out several attacks in the Damascus area and that material damage was done to these two different areas. In the past, these attacks have primarily targeted weapons transfers that were going towards Hezbollah, unknown at this time. Finally, an interesting report relating to the deal between Israel and Hamas and how that might affect Lebanon. There was a report today of a meeting between Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, along with 2 Hamas leaders, Khalil al-Khaya and Osama Hamdan. After the meeting, in an Al Jazeera interview, a Hezbollah official stated that even though Hezbollah is not part of the deal, I'm quoting, South Lebanon is a front that is supporting Gaza, and thus Hezbollah will live up to a ceasefire if Israel lives up to it. Later, Al-Arabi al-Jadid also quoted the Hezbollah official, stating that the pause may have an effect on Lebanon as well, and there was also quoted, it is up to Israel. If it stops its crimes in southern Lebanon, then Hezbollah will live up to a ceasefire as well. The Lebanese newspaper Nida al-Qatan also reported on this, and other reports also stated that the Lebanese army is involved to try to get Hezbollah to cease its fire during these days of pause and not take advantage of them. So this is not part of the original deal between Israel and Hamas. That only relates to the Gaza Strip, but at least according to reports, on its own volition, Hezbollah is also willing to participate in these days of pause. Remains to be seen if that actually plays out. Regarding the regional developments in the last 24 hours, the Houthi rebels in Yemen fired a barrage of missiles towards Israel's southern town of Eilat. These were intercepted by Israeli F-35s outside the borders of the country. Later, the Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Saria stated, and I'm quoting, any military vessel that defends Israeli ships in the Red Sea will become a legitimate target for our forces. Our forces are targeting ships sailing under Israel's banners, run by Israeli companies, or owned by Israelis. This is an expansion of the previous threats the Houthis made. It is unclear if this is actually intended for the future, or if this is the Houthis trying to save face after they took over the Galaxy leader, thinking that it was actually run by Israel, but it was actually only partly owned by an Israeli. So now they're saying that actually what they were initially targeting was ships sailing under Israeli banners, run by Israeli companies, or owned by Israelis. Unclear what the level of threat is at this time. The head of the Houthi Navy, Mohammed Fadel Abdelnabi, was filmed today aboard the hijacked ship, and he was there shouting the Houthi slogan, including "Death to America, Death to Israel." According to reports, he also met with the crew members and told them that they are considered guests in Yemen and that anything they need will be provided for them. The United States also stated today that it intercepted several attack drones that were launched by the Houthis in Yemen, presumably headed towards Eilat in Israel, but that was not part of the report. In a different region, the Pentagon today reported that U.S. warplanes attacked a militia in 2 different sites in Iraq, following the fact that that militia had sent short-range ballistic missiles against U.S. forces in the last several days. Shortly after this report, the Katib Hezbollah militia, which again is not the same as Hezbollah in Lebanon, it is a different militia that is loyal to Iran, located in Iraq, reported that 5 of its people have been killed south of Baghdad, presumably in this attack by the United States. Moving on to some of the political and general trends that have occurred, the U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby today stated that there are positive indications of continued normalization options between Israel and Saudi Arabia. So Israel and Saudi Arabia were in very, very advanced negotiations for a normalization deal as part of the Abraham Accords. This was all officially stopped after the attacks on October 7th. According to the U.S. National Security Council, there is indication from both countries they would like to continue at a later date. In other news, Netanyahu today stated in a press conference that the Mossad has been instructed to target the heads of Hamas around the world, and this was later backed up by Israel's Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, who stated explicitly that Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, and Khalid Mashal, the former head of Hamas, are, I'm quoting, living on borrowed time. In addition, the former head of the Mossad, Ephraim Halevi, today stated that in his opinion it will be difficult for Israel, after any pause in the fighting, to throw its full weight into the war. He explicitly stated that he's identifying that the United States is hoping to use the pause in the war as a way to possibly moderate the war and get things to dial down. Officials in the White House stated that President Biden remains committed to his initial position and that the war must end with Hamas being destroyed. In addition, the King of Jordan today arrived in Egypt, and he met with Egyptian President Sisi in order to discuss regional developments. And final political developments, Sweden today announced that it is going to ban Hamas and declare it illegal in the country. Moving on to some speculations regarding the future of the Gaza Strip, Bernie Sanders today published an opinion piece in the New York Times in which he called to condition U.S. aid to Israel on Israel abiding by international law, I'm quoting, and our own sense of decency. That includes an end to indiscriminate bombings, a significant pause in the bombing and massive humanitarian assistance that can come into the region, the right of displaced Gazans to return to their homes, no long-term Israeli occupation of Gaza, an end to settler violence in the West Bank, and a freeze on settler expansion, and a commitment to broad peace talks for two-state solutions in the wake of the war. So that's at least Bernie Sanders' vision regarding what must be the future of the Gaza Strip. It must all lead towards a two-state solution. In addition, President Biden today spoke with Egyptian President Sisi, stating not something similar with regards to conditioning aid to Israel, but something similar with regards to the vision for the future. He stated that the U.S. will not allow any forcible transfer of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip or from the West Bank, and he emphasized the United States remains committed to the establishment of a Palestinian state in the future, and that Egypt will have a vital role to play in creating conditions for this outcome. That is my report for the last 24 hours. I'll be back tomorrow.